Lovely to see you all this morning and to be together and to sit together, most importantly, in the way that we do uh, when we come together in this way. So my name is Jo An, if I have yet to meet you, and I look forward to meeting you live in person someday soon, I hope, if I have not yet met you. And I live in New Paltz, just a bit north of the Village Zendo, along the Hudson, and we abut the Shawangunk Ridge, part of the Catskills, a ridge of mountains that many of you are probably familiar with, famous for climbing. Jiryu and Keishin climb this very, parts of this ridge. It's stunningly beautiful wilderness and makes for great climbing. And these ridges were made, I'm no geologist, but over years of sediment accumulating over, millions and millions of years piling up. And you can see it in the strata in some of the rocks of certain types of rocks that collected at certain times. And then further sort of carved by the retreating glaciers pulling back and taking away what maybe wasn't needed, and time allowing even more of it to just fall away. Uh, but that's a bit about where I am right now. Just over there, they are. So I work as a nurse. Many of you have probably heard my nursing stories before. And this summer, I took a job just a bit further north still at a summer camp, a very ritzy, high-end, lots of money to send your kids there, summer camp. For ages 7 through 17. There were junior counselors at the age of 17. And it's stunning. It's just absolutely beautiful wilderness in these very mountains, another sort of part of it, but the same chain, if you will, of mountains. And it sort of just fell in my lap. I knew that I needed to make a little extra money over the summer. My work at Marist College in college health, while it's good, was, it would be nice to have a little more money. So I saw this job, I applied for it, and within minutes I received a phone call to talk about offering me the job, which probably should have been my first red flag. But I went ahead, and the money sounded pretty good. And, I had this idea, this won't be so bad. I've done a lot of types of nursing, so how bad can it be, being in a log cabin, in the mountains. I sort of romanticized and idealized it. I knew there'd be work, but I figured there's a handful of med passes to the kids that take medications. There's some triaging the kids who fall down, go boom. There's some sick kids that you watch overnight. But, all in all, this isn't going to be too rough. Anything that's really complicated is going to go to the emergency room, and it should be pretty easy. And in a lot of ways, it was very much that. It was a lot of those things. But there's also a culture at this camp of generations and generations of campers. So kids whose parents went to that camp and met there, and whose grandparents went to that camp and met there, and expectations perhaps that they were going to this camp to have a very similar experience to their parents or their grandparents. So it was early on, as I sort of intimated, that I knew this was probably not a good fit. But I couldn't exactly figure out the why it wasn't a good fit. So in my computer screen, it might look fairly organized, but the boundaries of what you see here could be fairly disorganized. But that said, as a nurse, I really do like organization. I like policies, I like procedures, I like things to be have a rule and a way to be done. And I understand that sometimes it doesn't always work that way, but it's nice to have something in a 3-ring binder that says, nope, this is actually how it's done. And camp nursing really doesn't lend itself to that. Things disappear, documents get Gatorade spilled on them, paperwork blows down the sideline of the, lacrosse game and into the lake. It's that sort of stuff that, while it's frustrating and irritating, and there were moments that I wanted to, place blame on a coworker or find fault in someone's level of commitment, that wasn't it. That wasn't the issue. And I also was troubled really by the amount of privilege that was there. While I have to say I did not grow up poor in the truest sense of the word, the enormous wealth that is present there, would be just intimated in conversations between two kids waiting to see the camp doctor, that you would hear what their winter vacation looked like or something. And it is mind blowing to me, the deep pockets that these kids had access to. And again, while that irritated me and it whipped up all kinds of stories about have and have not and privilege and all of that, that wasn't what was really chewing at me, when I looked deeply. So the camp has a very simple mission statement. It's a one sentence mission statement. We teach children the skills of making and keeping friends while building their self-esteem, self-confidence, and resilience. And it sounds great. It really does. And I think for a ton of these kids that happened, that they went home to their parents and they were more self-confident. They, were resilient. They learned a lot. They had a peak experience at this camp. I won't be the guy that poops in the punch bowl. For a lot of these kids, they had a great experience. However, working in health services and being in the clinic, the infirmary there, I had a unique window into some of these kids' experiences, and they were not, shall I say, unlike mine growing up as a kid. So I grew up visibly queer. I had no butch veneer to hide behind. I was a really easy target. And growing up in the 70s, in the 80s, there were expectations that the boys, much like this camp, would be on the boys' side of the lake and the girls would be on the girls' side of the lake. And boys were going to have opportunities that girls don't have, and girls take home economics and boys take shop, and boys do sports and they find a sport they're great at and they excel at that sport, and that's how the world works. And I think that what was most triggering for me in this environment. It was like walking in for me in some ways into a middle school or a high school locker room. And while the rhetoric was not maybe there, the feeling for me was. And I think of classmates of mine from that period in my time who I'm still friends with, who reach out and say, will you be going to the reunion? This 40th reunion, 45th reunion, 50th reunion. And I have overwhelmingly declined again and again, because for myself, and I think this is not an uncommon experience for anyone who felt on a margin at some point, there's nothing I want to reunify with. There's nothing for me to go back and align myself with. The only takeaway for me was resilience. That was all that I walked away with, not that confidence. So it really wasn't, as an adolescent, I don't want to, paint this picture of that it was just a horrible childhood. There were many things that were great about it. But the trauma itself was consistent, and it was consistently ignored by the powers that be. So, the great reveal here is none of these campers came out to me. There's no peak experience I get to share with you about some single camper who came to me whose life I changed by being there for them. That didn't happen. I'm not sure it could have. It was not set up in a way to allow for that. I hope that any camper who felt othered or not a part of, or at a loss, found someone that they could share their concerns with about feeling like a second-class citizen, or being made to engage in heteronormative rituals that they did not feel that they wanted to be a part of. I hope that they were heard. And while there were no written rules or policies on the books about how the camp behaved, it was the unwritten, gender normative, heteronormative culture, and the camp hyped, certain periods of time throughout the camp season. So, the first big thing is the boys' basketball tournament, where other camps of boys come, and the girls are there to cheer them on. and there's really no girls tournament of any real variety, but the boys are put out front, and the girls are encouraged to paint themselves up and dance on the sidelines and encourage the boys. Um, and then there's, other big events that happen throughout the year that I found further dividing. But it all leads to the big event, which is prom, and then the banquet dinner. And for prom, all the boys are encouraged to come up with promposals, which are a thing that are supposed to be cute ways of asking a girl to go to the prom. And they've assured that it's all equitable because everyone's going to be asked and have a date, and they've figured this all out. But they left out anyone who doesn't want to date someone of the opposite sex in their thinking about it. So, at everyone, camp is encouraged to participate, but were they all seen? Were they fully seen for who they are? And I can't help but think about the Dogen quote, the famous quote that we hear all so often about to carry the self forward and actualize the myriad things is delusion, but the myriad things come forth to actualize the self is enlightenment. And these kids were being asked to come forth and be themselves, and yet not being actualized by their environment all too often. And while they were in the minority, I saw them, and I hope that my seeing them changed things for them. So the Village Zendo fairly recently changed the dedication in our afternoon service, and it includes our queer ancestors. And while I had heard that online and read it and the emails going back and forth and was deeply moved for it, it wasn't till I was on this retreat and I heard our Jiryu chant it that as I bowed, I just wept at the recognition that not only am I included, I'm seen. I'm actually seen, and that changes a lot. And the Village Zendo was founded by queer folk. Its abbess is a queer person, and as I was bowing and tearing up about how I was seen, I couldn't help but think, what do I not see? What do I leave out? What do I not include? Who do I not include? Just reflexively, what micro, aggressions do I create on my daily activities that don't recognize someone and makes them feel less than? In the opening study of our text, Koan Ejo, in the fourth or fifth paragraph says, encourages us to be like a flame floating. And I see all of us, as these little lanterns in these boxes on my screen, and even more so when I was on retreat, all of us as these things that can offer light and warmth. But it's a combustible. It can also be really destructive. Our fire can be a very destructive force as well. So I suppose it's how we work with it, how we work with the light we have, and how we're encouraged and taught and seen by outside forces that creates and helps to kind of grow that light. I think about the campers who didn't fit the mold, who didn't really fit into the whole idea of what was what, who perhaps found the mandate to make a promposal diminishment of who they were, or maybe an ignoring of who they were, or even at worst, maybe a desire to put that light out altogether, that light should not be shown, should not exist. Soten brought up a part of this text in his talk on Thursday that it's a hard act to follow, Soten. You really you made it difficult for me to give a talk after your beautiful talk on Thursday night. I encourage you to listen to it. But he brought up a part of this text that I love. This display of luminosity must not be something you experience in sitting, but in each step, this step, this step. And I've often seen our zazen really as the gym. It's mind workout for us. We don't go to the gym and lift weights to be good at lifting weights, and we don't sit to be good at sitting. We sit hopefully so that we can stand up and take a couple of steps in the world. Um, it's great to be good at sitting. It's nice, but that's not the purpose. It's not to We don't sit to get good at sitting. Uh, and to do it, to take those steps, as it were, and to carry our practice forward off the cushion and into our very lives, is not easy if we're unsupported, if we don't feel seen, and if we don't feel supported. So those of us who were fortunate enough to just have this session experience at Wisdom House, were the beneficiaries of that support. Daily zazen, daily service, daily interviews, eating together in silence, practicing together in that way. Really easy to let that flame sort of float and see what it wants to burn and what's its fuel source, and how's it functioning when we're in an environment where we're supported in that way. And yet what happens when we're not supported, when we don't have uh, sort of the sangha there to support us, to be seen, to reflect what's going on for us and us for them, when that isn't there. I I had the opportunity recently to meet with a student in Daisan and an interview, and it's really a privilege to be on that side of the interview. I have to say now, and having done it more not online but in person with some of you while on retreat. And he presented a koan that some of you may be familiar with. Koryo has given us a list of sort of what are seen sometimes as prep work for koan study. They're short phrases, short questions, but they really stand alone as a place of practice in and of themselves. And he had come in with one of those questions, and it was become a mountain or create a mountain. And I watched this person become a mountain in front of me to fully embody becoming a mountain. And isn't that what all of these koans are asking us to do? And isn't that what this practice is asking us to do, to become a mountain? I think of all our Chinese ancestors whose names often were just the mountain on which they lived. So, to become a mountain is to become yourself. And how do we become ourselves? How do we do that? And how do we do it when we're unsupported? It's not a slow process. If we're unsupported, we may feel the need to become a mountain by exploding in a volcanic eruption. And then hopefully in doing so, not destroy ourselves in the becoming of that lava. Maybe we have to become a mountain by pushing up against another force, like a tectonic plate, that comes against something that is unjust, that isn't right, and then we become a mountain. Maybe that's how it has to happen. I'd like it all to be like the gunks, the Shangunk Ridge out here, that it's a slow, and what I perceive in my own way, time consuming but gentle accumulation of information and falling away of information that doesn't serve this mountain. I would like for every person in their mountainness to have that experience, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. Some mountains are volcanic. Some mountains are the force of two plates crashing against each other. So when I worked with these kids, I would look at them, and in my heart, I would think, I want you to have the best granite base you can have. Something that isn't porous and soapstone like. I hope your takeaway from this 7 weeks gives you something to build on, something that is solid for you. Or if not, and things didn't work for you, that you have the wherewithal to put out the falling rock sign, on your road, so that folks know that there's stuff falling away. up ahead, and they can beware and swerve if they need to a bit when they're dealing with you. And when kids that I knew were on the margin were in the infirmary, and they often come there, because maybe they feel that their being on the margin is pathological in some way, so they come to the doctors and the nurses, or maybe they come because I would camp it up in the truest sense of what camp is, and let my freak flag fly in a really appropriate way. I hope for these kids to let them know, that there was an adult there that could reflect possibilities for them of who they could be in the future. And I prayed for them that their creation would be free of earthquakes and free of volcanic eruptions, but I know it won't be. And for that matter, for whatever reason, if you feel you can't be the mountain that you are, that you already are, I pray that for you, that you can erupt, or you can push against that which is keeping your mountain from rising, and find the strength and the resilience to be who you are. Mountains are made in different ways. They're made in different ways, and yet the water that flows down from them all goes to the same ocean, right? So I'm going to leave you with the words of Genjin Savage. Robert Genjin Savage was the co-founder of the Village Zendo, and we chant his name in our dedication. And I did not get a chance to meet Genjin. He died of AIDS in 1991. He was a great composer and a dear friend of Roshi's. And Roshi and he practiced together at Zen Mountain Monastery. And he wrote something about wilderness camping for the Mountain Record, which I believe still exists at ZMM. And I just stumbled upon it when I was looking to listen to his music while I was writing. And I think it speaks a bit to what I'm talking about here. Your desire for something to happen blinds you to the fact that it's already happening here, now, in the perfectly still, perfectly silent forest. Then, becoming equally still and silent in the posture of zazen, the teeming life emerges from all the nooks and crannies where it has been watching you the whole time, and you find yourself accepted as part of the furniture. Field mice flirt and fight around your folded legs, and a pleated woodpecker practically grazes your head on its way to a nearby trunk. Deer catch your scent but don't scamper off, not reading you as the restless Homo sapiens they know best in hunting season. Cautiously they creep closer, heads bobbing, their big wet eyes and big wet noses and flopping ears irresistibly drawn by curiosity. What is it?